Hi everyone, welcome to the tech special on Fire and Forte. I'm Hannah and today I'm going to share with you my journey into e-commerce. I think it's a really good example of how if you want to change careers or switch it up a little bit later in your career, about how you can do that, because I did that in my late 30s. A little bit of background, I started out in marketing and was working in retailers in the UK for a good 12 to 15 years before I then decided to move over to the supplier side because I really wanted to get close to the product, the data, the P&L, and understand what it was like from their side. So when it came to me looking at e-commerce, I began by looking at the transferable skills that I had. In marketing, I had a breadth of experience around planning, creating, executing, reviewing marketing campaigns, creating brands and brand identities, and making sure that we were communicating a brand consistently, and so on. Absolutely loved it. And then in category and then later in sales, I got really close to the full P&L and understanding at a more macro level what was driving a certain category's growth, how a brand should position themselves within it, and help work with our customers on sales opportunities. So I then started to think about what am I missing from my actual skill set if I want to move into e-commerce. And obviously a key part of it was the channel itself. I'd not had loads of hands-on experience actually working on digital platforms. I'm going to talk you through the 5 things that I did to get the skills that I needed to move into an e-commerce role. So number 1 was really easy, and that is my tip is being curious. I began by reviewing a load of websites on desktop and on mobile where I could understand how they executed their offer for the customer. Was it a good experience? How did the brand come across? If I wanted to buy something, how easy was it to do it? If I was searching for something, how did the search bar work? And over time began to build up a real great bunch of examples that essentially I could feel comfortable with talking about from a SWOT analysis point of view. Oh, the search function is so annoying, or I really like the way that this retailer, e-retailer does discounts. So I would look at, their promotions, what would encourage people to shop, how I could find things, and also crucially, what the checkout experience was. Now, this just demystifies e-commerce when you realize that actually you can put yourself into the shoes of a customer and soon realize what maybe some of their pain points might be, and also where some of the opportunities are. So number 1, be curious. Number 2, very easy to access, the joy of YouTube. Now, I got really into learning about e-commerce during the pandemic. So look, I had a lot more time on my hands to go through YouTube archives. But I wanted to understand a bit more what it was like actually being an e-commerce business. So I started to have a look at panels that had been recorded and shared on YouTube. And there were lots of them talking about the future of e-commerce. In fact, actually TED Talks as well, talking about what the next few years would look like, what the future of delivery looked like, what the future of shopping in total could look like. And started looking at various conferences where people from the industry had stood up and done talks. So there's loads of them, whatever industry. Actually, if you're interested in e-commerce or any field now, during the pandemic, with everything going online, loads of panels existed and loads of panels were uploaded onto YouTube. So go into the search bar and just have a look at a certain company that you might be interested in. And more often than not, there's going to be something where the experts are actually talking about their plans and their activities and what's been working and what's not. YouTube's also great for hearing from people who work in the industry. There are actually plenty of influencers who are talking about their experience of Shopify, how to actually do it if you want to get your hands on this yourself. So number 2, again, really easy to do, YouTube. Number 3 is being in charge of your own learning. So actually, before this period of time when I started thinking, actually, I really do want to move into e-commerce, I'd always been curious about digital, and I had attended a few courses. On a Tuesday night, I seem to remember G-Assembly would run an evening course in Sydney. So I would trot off after work to a couple of night courses where I could learn some really important topics such as user experience and understand about that design process. When I got more serious about wanting to learn about e-commerce, I thought I actually want to get some qualifications now. So I signed up to a couple of courses. What I would do is look at LinkedIn courses. They're really credible. They're really varied. Like I said, G-Assembly, they're amazing. You can find topics on such important areas across all of technology, and the user experience one's really good. You can also just do a free workshop before signing up to a course. And thirdly, I had a look at some industry providers. So eConsultancy did courses. So I got myself a qualification that was an elite qualification and really got me into the detail of working in e-commerce and got me that really helpful technical knowledge and qualification. Number 4. So number 4 is actually, I was in a business that sold things via e-commerce channels. It wasn't part of my job officially, but I started to actually become more curious about that area because actually I was responsible for sales in a category and some of the strategic direction of where we were going. So I started to have a look at where our sales were going and some of that data. At the time, the percentages were quite small, but I started to become more and more familiar with that data so that I could actually understand maybe some of the trends. Yes, the percentages were really small, but some categories, the percentage was higher than others, for example. So my example here is if you're working in a business where you've got an e-commerce function, then spend some time with them, have a look at the metrics that they use and see if it's some metrics or there's maybe some reports that you can get yourself really familiar to. And also have a think about how you'd maximize any opportunity. So maybe give yourself a bit of a practical example of, okay, if this was my brand, what would be my idea? What would be my suggestions for improving sales on this shop, in this customer, in this way? And go and approach one of those people. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are, just say, I'm looking to move into this space, and everybody should be up for it. I really do think no matter what our age or seniority or everything, if we all lead by example, actually, by saying, I'm totally new to this space, can I share some ideas or thoughts or questions that I've got? Then it's going to make for a much more rewarding, healthy career, and everyone likes to help people, right? It's nice to be asked. Number 5 is all about real life. So understanding the industry, what's going on, and having a crack and some case studies. So obviously keeping in touch with the news on what's happening with certain areas that might be an opportunity or might be evolving. So it might be that actually drones are now part of the delivery service, and that would be something that you should be considerate of. It might be that actually quick commerce, so getting your food delivered really quickly to you by a bike, is something that's a growing area. Making sure that you're really up to speed with the industry is really important for your own knowledge, and that you keep doing that reading. And then is obviously really important if you go to employers. I would potentially have a go at a real example and definitely look at previous case studies. Again, the World Wide Web is your friend. You can find case studies on, I remember looking at beauty brands and what they'd done, how Space NK had grown their online business as an example. And then there were so many case studies that were coming out of COVID that I got really close to understanding what was happening with markets that were ahead of our market. So I was in Australia, but what was going on with the UK and the US? How much demand was there? What kind of challenges was that throwing up? And therefore, what would I need to be mindful of if and when I got a job in e-commerce about how we should react? So they're my 5 tips to run through those again. Number 1 is be curious. Get shopping, or certainly get looking over your whole breadth of websites. Number 2 is YouTube. Get learning and researching from YouTube, from the industry. Number 3 is a professional qualification. Have a look for the one that suits you best, and maybe start with something like a 1-hour workshop that's available online. Number 4 is get close to any kind of data if you can, if it's in your business, or if you can, again, find an online course or an online example to get yourself really close to the kind of metrics that matter in e-commerce. And then number 5 is get real. So get some real life exposure and knowledge, read the press, and have a look at where you can maybe apply this real life knowledge to some kind of case study. Maybe that's working with someone that you know who works in the field, or working with a startup. So I can highly recommend the world of e-commerce. It's changing all the time, so it never gets boring, and it's very important actually to keep an eye on the future. So I really hope this has encouraged you to look into a job in e-commerce. Thank you. I'm Hannah from Forte, and I'll speak to you soon.